the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
All right. Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling with your hosts, Allie Spooner and moi. This month, really excited to have Mavis with us. We're talking about mysteries and more. We feel so lucky to have Mavis with us. She wrote the popular Caitlin Calloway mystery series, of which I just recently sort of started rereading that because I wanted to be prepared. And I had forgotten so much about the first book that I read in that series, and was just reminded about how much I like Mavis's writing after rereading a couple of her books. Okay, so it is my absolute honor to introduce Mavis to you. After earning her degree in theater, which led to an amazing bartending career, during which Boston native Mavis Applewater started writing at the request of an incredibly wise woman. She claims that's why she married her. She's the author of 9 full-length novels, The Brass Ring, My Sister's Keeper, Tempest Fugit, Goldie Winter Whispering Pines, Finding My Way, The Plaza, Muriel Island, Angel's Heart, and Checkmate, the second Caitlin Calloway mystery. She also has penned 4 collections of short stories, including Home for the Holidays, Goldie finalist for Best Erotica. That sounds good. I haven't read that one.
Yeah.
She's currently running her romance East Lake, writing her romance East Lake Road on Kinda-Velo. She currently lives in Southern Nevada with her wife Heather and their 4 kids. She's looking forward to the release of Playland and the first Harper Winston thriller. Want to know more? Visit her website, www.yomavis.com.
Yo, Mavis.
Yo, Mavis.
I like that.
Without further ado, you're on. Take it away.
Oh, okay. Here we go. And this is from Playland, which has not been released.
All right.
All right. Soon to be. Well, next few months. Harper stood in the elevator, watching the numbers click slowly by as she prayed for her assistant to just get to the point. Howard was a dear man who had a way of drawing out a story to agonizing lengths. Post-pandemic life was just getting back to normal, and she was eager to embrace it. Instead, she found herself trapped in an elevator, listening to Howard's latest adventure. So I said to him, "Listen, Mary," Howard asserted dramatically, "I did a march on Washington before your parents met, just so you can act like a pissy little queen. The bartender is working her ass off. You don't have a drink because she's busy. And no offense, you're cheap." "I can't believe he called Caitlin a phobe," Harper noted as she wondered why the elevator seemed particularly slow that morning. "That isn't the worst of it." "And just what is the worst of it?" she asked, knowing that she would regret it. "My thank you for defending Caitlin was a lecture from a clueless baby dyke about how I shouldn't call people Mary or a pissy queen. And do you know who I blame for that lecture? Me. And my entire generation." "That's right," he triumphantly announced. As the doors mercifully opened, she was filled with a glimmer of hope as she stepped off. The glimmer quickly vanished as Howard stepped in front of her. "No one can say anything remotely witty anymore because your generation weren't allowed to lose a soccer game. You just stand there with nothing but a closet full of participation trophies and accepting parents and judge me because I call someone a pissy queen. You can't do that. You also can't call someone a baby dyke." "So I was informed at length. Apparently, I created a hostile environment. Like I forced her to wear those clothes. What should I have done? You know what I should have done? I should have just called him a douchebag. That one never seems to go out of style. If your generation had its way, we'd never be able to tell anyone off for anything. Sometimes our only defense is a scathing retort. It's what separates us from animals. You and the rest of your pumpkin spice latte slackers are just too busy making TikTok videos. You know I'm your boss, right? She offered as she sauntered over to the glass doors emblazed with Winston Investigations. See? There's my name. Don't be ridiculous. Everyone knows Della is the one in charge. In fact, she's the one that hired me and everyone else. Tell me, what is it you did? I hired Della. Hired? Hired, big, fine line, really busy. Oh, God, it's busy in here. I love it. She addressed the receptionist. The post-pandemic world really is certainly good for business. Nothing like being locked up with your nearest and dearest that will make a person want to know about their assets. We can thank the pandemic for the baby boom and the much higher than normal divorce rate. Gotta love that California is a community property state. But another reason to stay single. Yeah, that's the reason, Howard snickered. Nothing to do with your fondness of playing the field when it comes to dating, she cut him off. I think it's adorable that you call your unsavory activities dates. Again, I'm your boss. She scowled before returning her attention to the receptionist who was doodling. What's that? I decided I need a nickname. Why? Not to be indelicate, but at your age? No offense, Harper, but you don't need to constantly defend yourself. No one assumes you're evil based on your name. Sorry, I never thought of that, Karen. Why would you? You have a cool name. People still say cool. Spoken like a true millennial, Howard sighed dramatically. I'll have you know, my parents met at a bookstore. That's how I got my name. What does a bookstore have to do with your name? Each of them decided to pop in, buy a replacement copy of their favorite book. Same book? Yes. I'll give you a hint. My name was almost Scout. That's adorable, Howard placated her. It almost makes up for your generation killing off bookstores. You're a funny little man, she wearily offered. So, Katie, we'll try that. Katie, I should know anything I should know about? Senator Garland is trying to reach you. Oh, Cousin Susan. Della spoke to her. Anything else? What the actual fuck was screamed from across the office. Earlier, Andy was carrying something that looked like a body rolled up in a carpet. He was heading towards Della's office. Karen innocently added. Next time, lead with that. Oh, and there's a potential client in your office? Della was on her way to meet her, and yeah, well, based on the language we just heard, she's been delayed. Howard, find Andy, chain him to something sturdy, and I'll meet with Mrs. Culpepper. Do we know what her issue is? Apparently, it has something to do with Uncle Tommy's horse. Harper hurried towards Della's office, only to have her cut her off. What's in there? She questioned, jerking her thumb towards the door. No time, Della hissed in response. Let's just say Andy is a dead man. We have a client. Harper ignored it and threw open the door. Holy crap on a cracker. There were only two things in the world that creeped Della Donovan out. They were clowns and sock monkeys. Seated at her desk, amongst her sports memorabilia, was a 6-foot sock monkey dressed like a clown. No time, Della hissed. Mrs. Culpepper awaits. Mrs. Culpepper was a curious woman, to say the least. Her southern accent was nothing short of gentle and proper, as she discussed her Uncle Tommy and his horse. Mrs. Culpepper and I were discussing her dilemma before I was lured into my office. Yeah, well, we heard the noise. And just what brought you in here today? Horse, the older woman casually offered. They are everywhere. During this quarantine business, one was in the house. It's simply not done. What's next? Sunday services? I swear, it's downright infuriating. I take it Uncle Tommy has a weakness. Uncle Tommy lacks discretion. Men, women, the occasional farm animal. That last one's only a rumor, I hope. And how can we help? She nervously questioned, having already decided that she wasn't going to accept this woman's business. There are claims being made. I see. Do you? Della grumbled. I've been at a loss. I doubt there's any credence to them, given Uncle Tommy's advanced years and lack of any previous claims. I have my doubts regarding his virility. For some reason, he's enthralled with the idea. You can't talk any sense into him. I just need to prove what is painfully obvious to anyone who isn't a halfwit. She gave a disbelieving glance. I understand. Uncle Tommy's girlfriend is pregnant or has recently become a parent. You'd like a DNA test or some other evidence that would confirm the old bugger isn't the daddy. Girlfriend? He's far too old and she's far too slutty to be a proper companion. I must confess, I had my doubts about you gals from California, but your agency was highly recommended. Thanks to Uncle Tommy's fondness for wine, I find myself trapped here in Napa. He recently invested in a winery. More money tossed into the outhouse, if you ask me. Yes, and an heir would be most inconvenient as well. More money tossed into the outhouse. I would, of course, welcome a new family member. Of course you would. As I said, it's never happened before. I simply assumed that Uncle Tommy couldn't properly ring the bell. Just out of curiosity, who is it that recommended us? Mrs. Culpepper is an Ashford, Della readily supplied, with a mischievous gleam in her eyes. Oh, I understand, Wakin. I'm not convinced of the connection. My apologies, Della merrily offered. I failed to introduce my associate. This is Harper Danfield Ashford, Spalding, Bradford, Devonshire, Winston. A Danfield and an Ashford. Wait, you're the wine people. Isn't your daddy in politics? He was a United States Senator. He's retired now. That's right. David Winston, bit of a tree-hugging liberal. David is my brother. My father is Jonathan Winston. Goodness me, is he still alive? 93 years young, and he could still beat me at tennis. Harper boasted, knowing that her guest would still find something snarky to say. She sucks at tennis, Della confided while typing on the computer that was resting on her desk. Truth was, Harper barely used it. I thought tennis came naturally to you gals. Or is that soccer? Della, have you explained that we have a very full Mrs. Culpepper is a Delta? Della cut in. Why, Miss Winston, are you a Delta? We both are, she bitterly informed her while nodding towards Della. She was furious, knowing that this annoying woman assumes that since Della is Asian, that she wouldn't qualify to be a Delta. Oh, I guess you didn't finish. She seemed to be struggling. Finished what? Stanford? Della sputtered, clearly perplexed. Well, yes. No, we finished. Della not only finished, she went on to Berkeley for her master's. I stayed on at Stanford to earn my law degree. What happened? I mean, how did you end up here? We opted for happiness, Della informed her before Harper got a chance not only to tell this irritating woman to go to hell, but offered to help her along the way. Why don't we get the paperwork going? Della quickly suggested, just as Howard entered the office. Perfect timing, Howard. Could you print out the standard agreement? Paperwork? Tedious, I know. Oh, and Harper and I are going to be traveling. So, yes, I know. I'll need to water her plants and look after your cat. I love looking after Mr. Gunderson. He's great. Really, Harper questioned. He's surly. He hates everyone, and every time Della goes out of town, he poops in her shoes. And her most expensive shoes, I might add. My cat is a doll, Della argued. He reminds me of a drag queen I knew back in Michigan, Howard offered excitedly. Ginger Snapdragon. That cranky old bitch hated everyone. She was nothing short of fierce. The following day, Harper found herself trying to shake off a bad case of jet lag while she and Della navigated their way around the upscale apartment building in New York. They knocked on the door. A young woman answered. Marion Starling? Yes, she drolly responded. Look, I'll tell you the same thing I told those other vipers. I don't know anything about the murder. Murder? Harper stammered, reaching inside her pocket to retrieve her ID. What murder? Della eagerly inquired. If you're not reporters, then who are you? Harper Winston Investigations. This is my associate, Della Donovan. Now, you said something about a murder?
Ah,
Which begs the question, who'd want to kill a dominatrix?
yeah.
I do.
Very good. Very
Thank you.
good. Well, that's when is that coming out?
It was scheduled to be ready for editing before now. I'm behind schedule. So I'm hoping it's going to have to be early next year. I was hoping by Christmas that it would be out, but there's still a shot because it is well formed. I get hung up on the fact that I really wanted to kill another person. And I had to find the inspiration to take that person out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good story.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I used to find my victims easily when we had behind the bar a list of people who would, cheap or rude or just do something because you're wearing a name tag, you are fair game kind of individuals. So that's where I used to find, victims.
Oh, very good. That's a
Maybe.
great idea. Yeah. All right, Annette. So are you ready to share with us a passage from Love Sins, your latest?
I am. And I wouldn't technically classify it as a mystery, but it could be considered mysteries. I'm going to be a part of a panel at LCLC, and one of the questions is, does a mystery have to start with a dead body? And actually, this one starts with a dead body. So I'm thinking I could have shoehorned in this to the mysteries category, but it really is a romance thriller. So this is the final book, Love Sins, in the Next Generation trilogy, with bunches of badass women who are spies and agents and interesting individuals that go against the bad guys. So I'll start with the passage that has the dead body. Okay. Jess grabbed the set of keys Mr. Comey had given her and headed out the door. Once she slid into her car, she provided the address via a voice command and listened as the robotic voice directed her out of the dense part of the city. When Jess finally reached the site, she wondered if she was in the right spot. If there was a house behind the massive gate, she certainly couldn't see it. However, the row of cameras suggested whatever she was behind that gate was well protected. Climbing from her car, Jess reached the impressive barrier at least twice her height. An entry pad with a blue light glowed despite the brightness of the sun. Not knowing exactly how her DNA would open the gate, Jess pulled off her glove and placed her thumb in the center of the blue light. She felt a tiny prick and pulled her hand away, noting the minuscule bead of blood that had formed on her thumb. The blue light changed to green. Before Jess had a chance to react, she heard a kind of grinding sound, then a click before the gate popped open. She pulled on the heavy metal until the opening was large enough for her car to drive through. Cherry blossom trees lined the long driveway, beautiful sentries, offering a kind of softening to what Jess assumed might be a little overwhelming to the casual observer. It wasn't until she'd traveled down the flawless asphalt a fair distance that she noticed the massive structure. She parked, and as Jess approached what she assumed was the front door, an overwhelming feeling of dread flowed over her body. That sentiment wasn't just because she expected the second prick to her thumb after repeating what she'd done at the gate when she found the blue light. A green light flashed before she heard a beep and tried the door. Jess pulled her hand away and sucked the blood from her thumb. Sheesh, this must be what it felt like in the old days for people with diabetes to test their blood sugar levels. Macabre, Dad. Your place could be the perfect haunted house, she grumbled. The minute she walked inside, the odor of death smacked her in the face. It was at least 30 degrees warmer inside, so she unzipped her jacket. Gagging, she pulled her sweater over her nose and mouth. Jess tried to remember if her father had ever talked about a pet. She didn't want to come across some dead cat or dog that her asshole father had left to fend for themselves. That might break her heart. While she was definitely a dog person, she loathed seeing any dead animal on the road, and that was especially true of cats or dogs hit by a car and left to suffer before finally expiring. Making a beeline to the windows in the front room, she made quick work of opening every single one to let fresh air flood inside. The smell was still overwhelming as she began searching for the source. Maybe her father had left food out. Rotting meat or fish could be the culprit of that nauseating smell. Her next stop would be the kitchen, as soon as she could find it. The place was enormous, and she checked every room on the main floor. Jess had never seen such opulence. Not only were the rooms smartly decorated, but she assumed the artwork, carefully chosen, was worth millions. She let her nose guide her to where the odor seemed most offensive. Finding a door, Jess knew she'd found the source of that awful smell. Daylight shone through the basement windows, and she cautiously descended into relative darkness until she reached the bottom. She stopped in her tracks when she saw the body, or what was left of the body. Holding her hand over her mouth, she climbed back up the stairs, looking for a bathroom or a sink, anything. She didn't make it far enough as she vomited on top of what she assumed was a very expensive carpet. She could clean that up later. Quickly gathering her phone from her pocket, she dialed 911. The one trait she didn't inherit from her father was his paranoia. In Jess's opinion, not having to give your location when making an emergency call was helpful. She'd never turned off her GPS tracking, providing emergency personnel with an automatic address whenever anyone made a 911 call. 911, what's your emergency? Jess couldn't stop her body from trembling, which came out in her voice. My father, he's dead. Are you sure, ma'am? Did you check for a pulse? We can send an ambulance to your location. I'm sure. Okay, that was Love Sins.
Okay.